Gratitude is such a powerful thing in our lives. And so I want to say thank you so much to Mary. Mary has joined the Patreon account and she is going to be receiving all the amazing things one receives when they join the tier 3 option. So it's this shout out plus the transcripts plus the video episodes before the audio is released and the episode musings and a monthly pick card reading. So, Mary, thank you again for joining the Patreon, and I hope you enjoy all of those delicious things, and I can't wait to connect with you inside the community.
Quite often, my intuition is verified by the outside world. What I mean by that is the song comes on the radio, the sign, I drive past the sign in my car, the number plate and license plate in front of me is literally telling me what to do. Or, when you overhear those conversations, you're like, that's just answered. That often happens for me. And actually early on in my intuitive journey, as I was really starting to understand that I have this extra part of me that I was awakening up to, that was often how I paid attention to my intuition.
Your journey to the divine is an intimate exploration of self, where you are both the seeker and the source of enlightenment. I, Jessica Paschke, invite you to break free from the ordinary, to reforge your spiritual path with courage, curiosity, and audacity. Unleash the power of your spiritual connection, stepping into a purpose-driven life free of have-tos and shoulds. Join me on this profound exploration of rediscovery, where you'll not only redefine your own spiritual practice, but also inspire a collective awakening. Welcome to Reclaiming Our Spirit. Hello. Welcome back to Reclaiming Our Spirit. I am so excited today because we have an amazing guest. Our very first guest of Reclaiming Our Spirit is Melissa Amos. Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, Jessica. Thank you for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So I am a soul mentor and I work with people to really help them understand who they are and what it is that has brought them into this life that we find ourselves living. To understand that we are here for a life of purpose and that sometimes life experiences and previous life experiences might have just given us a challenge or two to overcome. And so I help you unravel that and really launch into this life of meaning, purpose, and clarity.
Melissa and I have known each other for quite some time, and we have lots and lots of chats about all things spiritual, but intuition in particular. It's just one of those things that comes up for us, comes up for our clients, and we're constantly talking about what's going on in the world of intuition. And in our last episode, you kind of got the overview, kind of the overlook. But this episode, we really want to dive in and talk about what intuition looks like in real life. Because I think there is sometimes a disconnect with how people think intuition looks versus how it is. And often they're left thinking, well, I'm not intuitive at all, when in reality, they just haven't figured out how they work. Wouldn't you agree?
Right. I think people often think that those of us who are intuitive have neon signs downloading from heaven in front of us saying, do this. And there is never any doubt. And it is all just, yes, this is who I am. And this is where I'm going. And this is what I'm going to do. And life is just fine and dandy all the time.
All the time with never a care.
You know the lottery numbers, when to play it, all the things.
I wish. It's a little less specific. So let's just start there. If you had to describe your intuition, Melissa, what would it look like for you?
My intuition is like a very direct but quiet whisper that is continually leading me to what it is that I want to experience in life.
Does the whisper, is it actual words or is it impressions? Like, what is that quality?
I've got the awkward one. The knowing, just the knowing. And so sometimes it comes in words. Sometimes I hear some direct guidance. Depends what I'm doing, but sometimes I'll see a vision. Quite often, interestingly, and I think I'm tapping into something else here, but quite often my intuition is verified by the outside world. What I mean by that is the song comes on the radio, the sign, I drive past the sign in my car, the number plate and license plate in front of me is literally telling me what to do. Or, when you overhear those conversations, you're like, that's just answered. That often happens for me. And actually, early on in my intuitive journey, as I was really starting to understand that I have this extra part of me that I was awakening up to, that was often how I paid attention to my intuition.
Knowings are a challenge. I get knowings and I get feelings or nudges. The nudges are like, it's like a little tug on my heart space or a little tug on my stomach space, like something like pay attention, pay attention. And they kind of come in with the knowings. So there's a feeling and a knowing. But I think the best way I can describe it is like an impression. It's not like I see everything. And I mean, I'm just talking for myself. When I'm working with clients, it's a whole different
Yeah.
thing. But when it's just myself and I'm just tootling along in the grocery store, you know, it's really kind of subtle. And it's more of a, you need to sit up, pay attention. Like you said, kind of
Yeah.
look around, be alert. Is it
Yeah.
somebody talking about something? Is it that song coming on the radio? Is it, what is it? It's kind of the first hit in a string of hits, if you will. It
Right.
doesn't land all at once for me. It's like kind of like a puzzle where I'm piecing it together. Does that happen to you, or do you kind of get it all in one drop?
I think it depends on what it is that I'm intuiting. So you said about being in the grocery store. Now we can use our intuition, for example, to choose what food we're going to bring home, to choose which of those apples on the shelf actually has the best nutritional value for us. We can choose whether this meal or that meal is actually going to be best for us. And when it's a question like that, which is something quite simple and really it's a either or answer, sometimes it is for me that that one just feels more tempting, drawing. It can often look a little brighter. It's kind of the one that stands out for me. If you've ever been to a crystal store and you're going to go and buy the crystal and you know how the crystal just kind of shouts at you like, pick me, pick me. I often teach this when I'm working with clients who are starting to discover their intuition and how it works. I'll often say, like, really pay attention to your body in that space. So you can pick up, for example, the two different types of apple, and you can ask yourself, like, is this one better for me? Is this one better for me? And your body will have a response. For me, that response is like a forward and back movement. So
Mm.
when something's good for me, and I'm paying attention, like my body doesn't like flop forward when something's good for me. I have to ask the question and pay attention. That's always number one. If I'm holding it and I'm like, is this the one for me? My body will move forward, often quite subtly, if it's a yes. And if it's a no, then it will move backwards. And that is something that you can take anywhere with you. It's not so obvious. You don't look like the crazy lady in the store, I hope.
It's not a big back and forth that's subtle.
You're
There
not
might be other
getting
things that
your
make me look
pendulum
like
out.
that, but it's not going to be that.
Right. You're not getting a pendulum out and going, is this apple for me? And then everyone's like, what is the lady doing? You know, it's something that's quite subtle in the body. And actually, the interesting thing is the more you do something like that, then the more your body will give you those cues in other situations. And you'll find yourself subtly leaning forward, or that expansive feeling maybe that you get in the chest, or you breathe slightly deeper, or you feel slightly stronger. There's other things that you can use, like kinesiology testing wise, but that's a really nice way.
Yeah, it's subtle and it's applicable to like moving through the everyday, because I think when we look at TV and movies, there's this kind of almost Oracle of Delphi thing surrounding intuition where it's this big mysterious kind of whatever, and it can be, there are moments honestly when it can feel like that, but then there are grocery store moments where it's just you're using it for just your everyday.
Yeah.
But when you're tapping into it as well, I'm curious, do you use critical thinking and logic as well at the same time as using your intuition?
When I'm making a decision, truly it has to come through all the things, because we are all the things. And your intuition will tell you what it wants, and you don't have to listen to it. I usually recommend it, but you don't have to. You're still, whatever you is still in control of what decision you make. I find that my intuition very rarely, if ever, leads me wrong. And your intuition knows what's best for us based on the parameters that we've put out there. So what we set our intentions, we tell our soul, our body, our mind, all of ourselves what it is and where it is that we want to go. Our intuition's job is to help lead us there. Now, if we've got the first bit wrong, then our intuition might be guiding us slightly in that direction that might not necessarily be the best place for us. sometimes where this thing goes wrong. But yeah, you have to ask yourself whether this works for me, whether this works for the family, whether this works for the situation I'm in, whether this works for my economic, all the stuff. And then you make the choice. Well, do I ignore all that? Usually, though, they line up. But
Usually they
you
do.
can't. The thing is we can get confused and we can have this huge epiphany and not even know whether it's intuition or not, and then be like, oh, well, my guides told me to do that, or my intuition told me to do it, so now I have to do it. And it's almost like we're absolving responsibility for our actions because my guide told me to do it. And for me, that doesn't
Sit.
always bode well. Right, exactly. It's like, okay, well, you still made the choice. You can't just blame your guides.
No, there does come a point in time like where they're just presenting options. This
Mhm.
is a possibility. And like you said, based on the container you've put out there, it's a response. And I think if you don't know how you work, you specifically, or you're not familiar with your intuition, that's where people get kind of bungled up. Like, I swear my intuition said this was good, quote unquote, or this was the way forward, but it could have intermixed with your expectation, or you could have interpreted it based on your expectations of what you thought should happen and then made it fit. That's, I think,
Right.
one of the bigger traps of working with your intuition when you first start out. For me, that means I have to be really kind of neutral and aware of the question that I'm asking so that
Yes.
I can tap into this idea of openness, that it could be outside of what I thought. And I have to
Right.
be willing to explore outside of what I thought it would be in order to get to the heart of what it wants to be.
Right. It works on the flip side as well. We've all been in this situation where we are thinking that our intuition is telling us, hell no, 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 do not do that. Do
Yes.
not go there. Do not go near them or it. Actually, it's not our intuition talking at all. It's our gut. I think people interchangeably use those words, my gut instinct and my
Oh,
intuition,
yeah, different things.
very different things.
Very different things. You want to talk a little bit about
I
what?
definitely do.
Yeah.
So our gut has the job to keep us safe. So if you think of our gut as like our solar plexus area, and what I've learned is that our this area, this part of us is constantly tracking, like our intuition, it is tracking, if you like, the invisible world, the subtle energies. But what it's looking for specifically is danger. Well, it's looking for two things. It's looking to go fundamentally, firstly, away from pain, away from danger, away from any life threatening things. And then secondly, towards pleasure. That's it. That's it. That's its job. And this is super useful because, of course, you want to know if danger is ahead. And, it's that same force that you're about to step and cross the road and then something pulls you back. It's the same force. Super useful. But if we've been through some traumatic experiences, or we're holding certain beliefs, or we have a experience that this isn't safe, or this kind of person isn't safe, or this kind of
Mhm.
situation isn't safe, our gut, remember, our body keeps score. You've heard this, right?
Oh,
Our
yeah.
gut is remembering that, and it's going, danger, danger, danger. This is like that.
Yeah. I was just actually doing some research on that for my Odyssey course that is opening up in February. And it was talking about how if we don't deal with our trauma and we don't deal with intense experiences that happen to us, even though emotionally and mentally we may sort of feel ourselves moving on, if we don't process them, the body keeps score. The
Right.
body remembers them and they can take up root in our body. And then, like you said, 5, 10 years down the road, something mimics it just enough
Yeah.
and your body's going, no, no, no. And you can't get the clarity you need to actually navigate the
Right.
present moment.
And that is going to be louder than your intuition going, yeah, go for it. And so actually the piece that's often missing, so often missing, is, well, how do we regulate ourselves? And how do we come into the truth of who we are? And it doesn't have to be trauma, like big T trauma. It doesn't have to be the big
Mm-mm.
things. It could be,
The little itty bitty stuff.
I had the most random experience where I was doing some work and we went into a regression and we were discovering what parts of us, or what we experience that is affecting our abundance. And I was expecting, some of the big things that happened in my life to show up. And I had three memories, one of which was just me in a fairground with my family, My family had said, go off and go on a ride on your own or something. I was about 8. They weren't far away. But my parents were like, Melissa, be very careful. Keep your money really close to you. Keep it really safe. And I was sitting there scared that everybody there was trying to rip me off and steal my money and all of this. I don't even remember that. But that was what came up as a significant factor. So now, when I'm in the fair with my kids and I'm like, oh no, don't do that, it's a waste of money. It's all of those beliefs coming up and coming back. It was like a teeny tiny, seemingly irrelevant moment. But that's what came up as I regressed and went back. And now I've brought healing to that and told myself that's not true. And this is the work that we can do to help us be able to tune into that truth of who we are, the potential that our intuition is guiding us towards.
Yeah, great point. I think that our intuition works better, or we understand it more clearly, the more we understand ourselves and our human path. You cannot disconnect the two. You can't.
No.
If you're embarking on having a clear connection to your intuition, then you need to understand, like you said, those moments when those limiting beliefs set in, or there's a mindset shift, or just kind of healing some of those things as you go along. The more that you look at yourself, the more you understand yourself, the more you understand the stories and the tales you tell yourself, the clearer your intuition becomes, because you can tell the difference between the busyness and that soul-centeredness.
And what I teach and what I do, what I practice, because sometimes we don't know. I've been doing this work like you for centuries, potentially, right? It feels like it. It's not always, it's not the neon sign on feathered wings. It's like I've said, it's more subtle. So what do I do? Especially when this decision is pushing me out of my comfort zone, which is always the best kind of decision, right? Is I give space to all of those parts of me. So I'm like, okay, what's the loudest one? The brain. The brain is always the one that has got the most things to say. It doesn't shut up. So I'm like, okay, brain, tell me all about it. And it gives me the 20,000 reasons why I should or shouldn't do it. And I'm like, okay, thank you, brain. Very interesting opinion. I hear you. Then I'm like, gut, body, tell me, what do I need to know? And it tells me, it gives me signals. And, for me, I kind of create stories out of them. I'm quite good at that, interpreting what it is that they're saying. Give it some words, if you like. Or it might just give me a feeling, a sensation. So I'm like, body, what do I need to know? Heart, what do I need to know? And then soul, maybe then guides. They are different. They're often alike, but they are different. Soul or intuition or inner teacher or angel, or really for you, whatever you feel is your highest form of guidance. What's your opinion? And now you have all the opinions, and then oh, okay, well, that fear of failure is coming from my brain that's busy looking at what they did and what he and she think. And my body is a little bit scared because now I'm putting myself out there. And there was a life once upon a time where I put myself out there and didn't end very well. So my body's giving me that information. And my heart's like longing for this connection. And my intuition's going, yeah, do you know what? You'll be fine. So now I know. And now I can make a decision and go, okay, well, I'm going to honor my body this time, because I don't feel safe enough, genuinely. And so it doesn't matter how strong my intuition is, I need to do some work here before I can move forward.
I love that so much. You didn't say, I'm just going to blow my body off. You're like, no, I need to pause and work on whatever that is. You're my hero.
It's all parts of it, Jessica. It's all of it. And it's all this whole kind of, oh, well, we only got one thing. We haven't only got one thing. We've got all the things. And all the things are important. I would argue that our intuition is like our biggest cheerleader. Our intuition's like, you can do it. We're gonna just move you out of this comfort zone a little bit.
Nudge, nudge.
Nudge. Big jump. And especially if you have, like I did last year, my word of the year and my focus last year was about evolving and evolution. And so naturally my intuition was like, you can do this. We'll be fine. Go put on an event in central London and hire the amazing venue. Just do it, it'll be fine. I did, and it was fine.
It was more than fine. It was wonderful. Let's talk about your event in London, just as an example, to kind of bring it into how that works. Inspiration came, you were nudged, external people are like, oh yeah, you should totally do this. This is great. And you're like, Hmm. I wonder, what did you do first when trying to make that decision as to whether or not you were going to take that leap and do something that you hadn't done before?
It'd been there in the back of my mind, and I ignored it because I was oh so busy doing all the other things. That's not true. That's what I told myself. And then I was on a business mastermind, and my mentor said, and I was like, I want the next thing. And she said, you need to do an event, and it should be in London. And my whole body was just kind of fired up in a good way. It was kind of like this. Oh, it was like all these parts of me went, yeah, she's heard it. It's fine. And I was a bit like, okay. And so I had this feeling, and actually, I heard myself say, yes, I'm going to do it before I'd really digested it.
Kind of like that out of body experience, like, oh, look at those words coming out of my mouth.
But this was because I was driven by the evolution thing. And I knew that. And even on that day when I went to this mastermind, it was like, okay, Melissa, you want to evolve, and you're here and you're doing this thing and you've invested the time and the money, just listen. And so I was like, okay, well, let's do this. And then I got home, and I could have chosen to or not to, and committed really to anything in contract. Started to just think about, okay, well, what is it? And all the doubts came in, all of the no one will turn up. What have I got to say? What if I mess up? All the things. And do you know what I did? Is I let them come out. I didn't go, no, shut up. I probably did that a few times, but I just let them come out. I pulled some cards. Before I pulled some cards, I pulled in my guidance team, and I was like, okay, like I want to do this, and I know that this is something that's going to be great for me. What do I need to know about it? I allowed my brain to have its say. I allowed my body to have, my body didn't feel so safe. It was interesting because I've done a lot of work on that, on the showing up thing and letting my body feel safe in public. But still, this was the next level. So that came up. So I did some healing on there. I did some tapping. I did some regression on it, just to tighten up the bits that was still firing off, that I didn't feel safe, which I am. And that reassurance piece of, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, I'm safe. And then I was like, okay, well, if I did this, I wonder where I'd hold it. And I went on, found this website. The first place I saw, I was like, that is my venue. It was called the Sanctuary of Peace in central London, one train from where I am, and 2-minute walk. I was like, this, and it was beautiful. And it had a tent in the garden, a tent of peace. And I'm like, oh my goodness me. And so that for me then was the confirmation. And then the price was right, and the number was right, and it was all just right. And I was like, well, that for me was the external validation, which I still look for from my sins. I still look for it. That was the external validation that, yes, it's fine. And I booked it, and then worried about the details later.
So this leads me to my second question. You talk about your intuition and tapping into it. And then you talk about calling in your like spirit support team. And those are two different things. How do you work with your intuition versus how do you work with your support team? Because I think people mix it up or think they're the same thing a lot of the time.
So I've done the work where I have aligned my spirit team. Because sometimes our spirit team, they have different agendas. Sometimes they do. I did a thing, and I've done it a couple of times, where I've created my board of directors, should we say. Just like you would if you had a company, and your company, you've got your accountant, and you've got your service manager, and you've got your sales manager, and you've got your after sales manager, and you've got your HR manager, and you've got all the things. So that's how I see my spirit team. They're like my advisors. So they're the people that I've employed, essentially. That it's like, well, I don't know about the accounting thing. It's not my wheelhouse. They're not okay. I don't have an accountant guide necessarily.
I
Although
should
I've
have one.
no. I'm like, why don't I have that? I've got to
Why
pay
did
my
I not do that?
bill tomorrow, and I'm like, oh my God. But as I just said that, I've got a
Yeah.
card sitting right here, and it's got Lakshmi on it. She's like, hello, I'm your abundance guide. I hear you. So just like I'm a company and I have my advisors, and I can trust them that they will give me their opinions, and that's what they are,
That's the key.
their opinions on certain subjects. And they all have a job. They're not all competing to give me the same advice. They all have their wheelhouse. And then there's me and my highest self, which I do use. I'm going to say I use interchangeably. My highest self, my soul, my intuition. Maybe that's not true. My highest self, my soul, is like the leader. He's like the CEO, or she, like the CEO of that. And the intuition, I suppose, is the receiver of that information. So I actually have to use my intuition to understand what it is that my guidance team are telling me, because it's the inner teacher, it's the inner wisdom, it's what's already inside. And then ultimately, my being, my consciousness is what makes the decision. I think our intuition therefore has two roles. Is one is the receptor of the senses, the interpreter of, okay, well, this is the information that's coming to me. Does my intuition tell me that that's for me, that that is my guide? Maybe our intuition combines all the
kind of
things.
ties it together, right? Like it
Right.
it brings it all together like that connecting thread. It's hard to figure out where one ends and the other begins. I think our intuition really is, like you said, in charge of the receiving. It can receive in different ways. It works very much with the soul, the higher self, our spirit team, our physical body, so that we can receive information. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's like the piece that connects all the bits together to make it work, to make it come together.
And I think in practical terms, when I talk about listening to our intuition, when I talk about that and I differentiate it from things like instinct and brain and body, then that intuition is, in that context, it's that thing that's leading us to our potential. And you said right at the beginning that there's this piece on, on purpose, and or it might have been another conversation we had. There's this piece on intuition and purpose. And I think that our intuition leads us to whatever it is that we have decided explicitly or implicitly that we are heading and moving towards. And so our intuition has a wisdom, but I'm not sure it necessarily has a mind of its own.
It's like that light in a lighthouse, right? And
Right.
it's helping us, kind of lighting the way forward, sort of guiding us, helping to make things clearer. But you're right, I don't think it has, I think wherever it comes from us, our soul, our essence, our whatever. That whisper, that voice, that inner voice that comes almost as if our soul just suddenly was like, I'm gonna just bypass human Jessica for a hot second and just remember what we
Yeah.
thought about that. Remember what's important to us, you
Right.
know? Mm-hmm.
That's it. And that's key, that our intuition bypasses the other things. It's like it doesn't take any of the BS that gets thrown at it.
And it's almost like it shows us the possibility of what could be.
Right.
And makes us aware of, honestly, where we're maybe a little stuck or need a little more work before we can step into that possibility. Like you said,
Right.
we're not going to ignore that we don't feel safe and do it anyway. We're going to maybe do a little work on why we don't feel safe, and then we can
Yeah.
step into it.
It's like that friend that just believes in you wholeheartedly. And sometimes you're just like, I just want to give up. It's like you're my intuition, Jessica. It's like, you just want to give up and you're like, no, amazing. You can do this. Amazing. Have you tried this? And you're like, why would I try that? Just try this. And that's the key. And you know what? If you're like, well, how do I know if it's my intuition talking? I'm going to give you a clue, right? So your brain will give you justification. Your brain is going to be like, you should do this because blah, 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 blah. And then blah, 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 and all the things. And it's going to keep on. It's just going to keep on giving you all the reasons. That's not your intuition. Your gut is going to be like, stay away or go for it.
Yeah.
That it's going to be that. It's going to
one or the other.
Yeah. And it's going to be very physical. You know when you get the sensations going on. Your intuition is more, it's very, in my experience, it's very direct. It often doesn't make sense. And it's just like one word or one line or one, like, well, try this. Not try this because blah, 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 blah. It's just like, pick up the phone, call this one, or write this post. Just try it, see what happens.
Yeah, it's not going to be, you have to. It's not going to be fearful. It's not going to be anxious. It's not going to be this or that. It's going to be, well, just play with it.
So the other night I was with the family and I'd been on a course all day long and I was really just kind of, my brain was like mush and I was just sitting there kind of like looking at my phone and suddenly I was like, I need to put Reiki training on. And it was just like it dropped. It's like, I need to put Reiki training on. And I was like, I don't need to do it now. And I was like, I could do it now. And I just looked in my diary. I was like, there we go. There's 6 Mondays free. I'll book them in. Because if I wouldn't have done that, one of those probably Mondays would have been booked in the diary on,
The next
by
day,
now.
yeah.
Right. So anyway, and there wasn't really an urgency as such. There wasn't a pressure, but there was just this like, can do it now. And so I spent half an hour, however long it took, putting it in my diary, doing the event on Facebook. And I was just, I'm not going to promote it now. I'm just going to put it and set it. And then I got a message. Oh my God, is it just the perfect timing? I've paid you the deposit. And I'm like, okay. I was just sitting there. So it must have been her that was like, oh, I really wonder when the Reiki training's going to be. And then I heard it and something went, go and do it now. And this has happened a few times with Reiki training specifically. And I think Reiki's got this cool energy that it calls you and it calls people. And that was it. There was no fear. There was no kind of in my head. There was no, oh, but I need to get all of the things sorted. It was just like, just put it out there and I can promote it, which I will do in the week. And that's fine. But for the one person that needed it on that day, it's done.
Like magic.
Like magic.
Like magic. And that's a really great example of how you're weaving your intuition into your business too, in your career and what you do professionally. What are other ways that you do that? I know how I do it. I'm curious to hear how you do it.
Oh my God, I do it with everything.
I know, so do I. I don't know how I would separate it. And sometimes I don't even realize I'm doing it till someone points it out and they're like, well, how'd you get from A to B? And I'm like, I don't know. I just knew. you know, I just knew.
I think there's a bigger conversation where we talk about how our intuition, our alignment, our knowing ourselves, our regulating ourselves, all these things that we've spoken about in the last half an hour or so play a role into how you're then showing up for your business. And whether that's your business or a role that you're playing in a business or, something that you're doing, when we have that alignment, our intuition plays just such a role because we get very clear about who we are. And of course, if we're talking about our intuition about being the receptor of all of these things, then that's not separate. I'm understanding who I am. I'm understanding how I serve, what my role is in the whole world, and how I'm expressing it and putting it out there. So I'm doing it in the way that aligns with me, the way that feels good with me, the way that I do best, the way that sits with my values, that sits with the other aspects of my life. And so I think that's the kind of the piece that can be very much missing. It had to be said, right? So we do that well at the beginning. But wherever we are now, it's like, okay, so this is where I want to be. We've always got to start with that. And that doesn't mean that this is where I want to be, as in when I'm going to be earning this much money, or I'm going to be on this many stages, or I'm going to write this many books. But this is where I want to show up. This is how I want to show up. Right. So we start there. And then our intuition begins to lead us into things like this. So we spoke about Awaken when I did my London event. I've run retreats where I used to run retreats with a friend in this beautiful space that she had. And weird things, like I'd message her and go, should we do one? She'd be like, I was just thinking about you. We should definitely do that. And then I'd be like, oh, what shall I make the theme about? And I'd get my cards, get my card decks, and I'd give them a shuffle and go, what's the theme of this thing? And literally it would come out. So I had like Unleash Your Magic. I changed it. I called it Unlock Your Magic. You know exactly the card I'm talking about.
I do.
So, something as simple as just finding a name for a program can come through the cards, through meditation, through guidance. Even things like pricing. So this is a good one. So how do we use pricing? Because this takes it all in, because pricing is the big thing, isn't it?
Isn't
Being
it?
like,
That's where most people get stuck is how do I price
right,
this?
right. So say you, I don't know, you're putting on these one-to-one sessions, you're like, well, how much do I charge for this? So you can use, you know, remember the supermarket, the apples, can use a similar thing. So you can be like, okay, £10, £20, dollars, 30, 40, 50. And you keep on saying these numbers, or write them down, or whatever it is that you like to work with. And you'll find that you come to a sweet spot. You'll just find that your body at one point will be like, ah, yes. And then you push it to the next one and the next one. And you notice where that fear thing comes in. There's your work that you do to regulate that, to start to understand. And I'm not suggesting that you have to charge $2,000 for your first session. You know, I'm not suggesting that at all. But you'll, as you go through those numbers, you can start to understand, okay, well, this feels good for me. This feels like for an hour of my time, I won't resent it. I'll enjoy it. I'll be rewarded rightly for what it is that I'm doing. And maybe I'm just stretching or expanding that comfort zone just a little. So if you land at 80, for example, I'd suggest you just kind of go to 85, just push it just a little bit, just so that you can start getting comfortable with being a little bit uncomfortable. But you use your intuition.
No, that's a great
So,
example because that's how you use your intuition, not only to figure something out, feet on the ground kind of thing, but to also for reflection, self-reflection. Now you've taken it from a tool to have the answer right now to what do I need to look into more deeply
right.
in addition? It's like a dual purpose. And that's where I think our intuition becomes really powerful is when we can move it into that state of awareness and reflection of, wow, look at that. I need to work around that. I need to grow. I need to look at that. I need to heal something. I need to just spend some time with something.
Right.
The other thing that I love using my intuition for is business connections. Like, ooh, I need to know that person. I need to
Yeah.
like DM them. I need to reach out. Or I need
Right.
to, especially when you're in big classes or something and someone catches your eye and you're like, wow, I don't know what it is about that person, but I need to reach out and say hello. You know?
Like we did
Like we
all those,
did.
right?
Yes.
Hundreds of us.
Hundreds. And yet here we are. A lot of years later.
We are still spring chickens, but some years later, yes. I think the key here is knowing that we have an intuition, knowing that we have an ability, knowing that there is a force guiding us. We set our awareness. So the first thing is always know yourself. Whenever you
Always.
speak to that's always got what I'm going to come back to, because as you know yourself, you'll know what it is that you want, where it is that you want to move forward, what your skills are, what your limitations are, or perceived limitations are, what your potential is, right? You know yourself first. And then you begin to set that. You're like, okay, well, what I would love to experience in my life is XYZ. You get that clear. Use your intuition, use all the things we've spoken about, use your guides if you like, use your cards if you like, get some healing, work with a mentor, do all of these things and get yourself very clear on that. And then what begins to happen is as you then need to move through your life, whether that's through your business, through your relationships, through the supermarket, you know, whatever it is, you understand that we have this power, this force that will always guide us towards what it is that we want to go. And it won't fail us. It won't give us dodgy information. It will keep on guiding us. That's literally its job. So what we need to do is just learn how we understand that, learn how we receive that, begin to turn down or at least compartmentalize the other voices that we all have. Okay, well, that's this. Give it time, give it space to open up. Again, it's in our power to make that decision moving forward. But the key for me has always been knowing it's there,
Yeah.
because then you use it as one of the resources that's going to help you. You're always consulting with it. And the more you do that, then the more you follow it. And then the more you realize, okay, well, maybe it does know better than me sometimes.
I think the more you trust it too, though. I always tell
Right.
people start off small with something that doesn't have a lot of impact. Like if you're starting in the grocery store, it's okay if you pick the weird apple because it's not
Right.
going to end the days. But you don't want to start off with like buying a house or
Right.
changing your job. Like start with something small. As you figure out how you work, the more that you get things, I don't want to say the word right, but the more that you get things in alignment where you see it kind of works out, the more you trust it. And then the more you trust it, the more you can use it. And the more, and it just kind of, until it becomes sort of seamless, and it's something that you're reaching for and you're using it while you're using all of your other tools as well. It becomes something you're fluent in. You have to practice on things that aren't going to implode your world if they
Right.
don't turn out.
I'm going to add to that because I love that. You want to practice on the things that don't have a fear factor involved in it.
Correct.
Something I've learned, and I was training with somebody and they were talking about brainwaves. It was so interesting how they align to what I understand about frequency and energy. Our brains are constantly searching for the dominant energy. And that dominant energy by default as human beings is the fear and the scarcity. It's a survival mechanism. That's
Right.
our default.
A
But
lizard.
that doesn't mean that it needs to be our default. So now my default, because it's so in my awareness, now my default is my intuition and my highest good. Because
Yes.
I say that. So I say every day, I commit to serving my highest power wholly, fully, and completely. So do you know what my brain's doing? And my energy is doing? It's tracking for my highest power. Because that's what I told it to do.
No, I love that. You made me pause. I have my thinking face on because at some point my brain and my intuition switched where it used to be that I would try to think something through. And that's where I really got bungled up because you can't think all the things and get the clarity that you're looking for. It is helpful, but you can't. Somewhere along the way, with all the practicing and the years that I put into it, and like you said, intention, my intuition comes in first. For me, it's kind of a feeling. I feel into the intuition. And then I'm like, hey, brain, what's going on? And the brain goes, well, da, 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 da. And I'm finding that the more that I use my intuition, the more that my brain's willing to go along with it because it's like, well, that last time, that intuition, they nailed it. Like,
Right.
whoo, and then our brain gets on board and everything sort of starts to flow and work together. Not always, but usually. But
Until you're in the unknown.
right.
And then we start again.
And then we start again. But even when you get to the unknown and you're starting again, with your intuition sort of guiding you, you may not know where you're going and your brain might panic a little bit. But there is this feeling almost like a settling, like a net that catches you when you know that you have a strong intuition and you know how it works. Because even though you don't know where you're going, your intuition can carry you forward.
Right.
And you can just meet the day where the day is, one day at a time. And you're not in your head, letting your head spin out, thinking all the things, trying to make sense of all the things. You're just getting quiet and you're tuning in. And you're like, okay, for me, I'm going to feel into this. I don't know where I am. Don't know what the heck is going on. But my intuition says it's going to be okay.
Right.
And you learn to trust that. And then your brain eventually settles down.
Now, how I work, as you know, Jessica, how I work is very much unscripted.
I know.
This is how I work. The information comes in. Do you know how terrifying that is?
Well, I do the same thing.
Right.
I love a good outline, but I often don't look at it.
So it's the same. So for Awaken, I did a little outline because there's timings and there's all the things, right? And and then a nervousness comes in. But what kept me going was, well, you know what? Spirit's never let you down, has it, Melissa? And I was there. No. And so I did what I needed to do. And I called in that sense, my highest wisdom. I called in the wisdom that was right for the space that I was leading. And I asked to be that vessel so that the information and the energetics and the frequency and the healing needed to come through. That comes with time. There's nothing that either of us can say that's going to just be like, yeah, it's fine. I'm unscripted. I'm going to do this. But the more you do it, you will realize that this does not lead you wrong. And then you can trust. And then it all comes into coherence. And that's really where the magic happens.
It is really where the magic happens. Oh gosh, we could talk for another hour about this. That'll be a whole nother 45 minutes. Okay, Melissa. So at the end of every episode, I always pose a question. I just kind of open it up to spirit. I let the question drop in. Something that y'all can walk away with, ponder, think about, and kind of reflect on. Will you just let a question drop in? Will you give us our question today?
Yeah.
Okay.
If your intuition could lead you somewhere, where would it lead you towards?
I love that question. I got goosebumps. I was like, where's my pen? Where's my paper? It's like, I'm ready to answer it, Melissa. I'm ready to answer it.
I'd love to hear from the listeners. Maybe they can email you, Jessica. And
Yes, definitely. 100% email us. Let us know so that I can share with Melissa, because I know she's as curious as I am. Melissa, where can everyone find you?
You can find me across the social media channels at the Melissa Amos. My website is melissa-amos.com.
Thank you so much for being here today. I'm sure you'll be back on. We always have lots and lots to talk about. I appreciate it. Thank you all for listening. We loved having you here. Like Melissa says, please submit your answers. Let us know, what are your answers to the question? And also, if you feel moved, leave a review. Let us know, what are you enjoying? What episodes do you want to hear next? What do you want to dive into? Remember, reclaiming our spirit isn't just about us. Reclaiming our spirit is about all of us. And so I would love to hear what you would like to jump into further. Have a great day, y'all. Thank you for listening to Reclaiming Our Spirit. To find out how I can help you reclaim your spirit, reach out to me at www.jessicapaschke.com. Leave me a message and I just may share how you reclaimed your spirit in the next episode.